Ashe, 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 and welcome to the Ashe Shop Podcast, the place for people who want to learn about the Orisha and African spiritual practices. I'm Ashley, your Orisha storyteller and your guide through the ins and outs of your spiritual journey. Think of this like your weekly spiritual study session. Our studies focus on practices based within the Yoruba pantheon, so you can expect to hear stories from multiple spiritual perspectives, including Isheshe, Lakumi, Santeria, and so much more. Every week, we're going to dig into a different Orisha, exploring their meaning and influence. This week, we're discussing the Orisha Obatala, King of the White Cloth. You will also hear Obatala referred to as Orishanla. We hear Orishanla come up in more Yoruba-based, Nigerian-based practices and stories, whereas Obatala is a very common name used for this Orisha within Lukumi Isheshe and other Western-based traditions. Obatala is Orisha Funfun, meaning that he is a primordial Orisha who is basically a part of creation. He is one of the fathers of creation, if you want to look at it that way, because he is credited with creating the body, the head, and really just making man what it is. He is not a warrior, but he is the king of war. Obatala is the guardian of the handicapped and disabled. This Orisha is very complex, very hardworking, and teaches us a lot. It's interesting because he has very complex relationships with other Orisha. Or Obatala was husband to Yemowo or Yembo. This is seen within your Isheshe-based practices. You will hear them referred to as Odua and Yembo. And whereas you see the same stories show up within Lakumi and Santeria's based practices, but they're calling the Orishas Obatala and Yemaya. But then we also have stories that literally show us the progression of Odua into Obatala. And from my perspective, it looks like a lot of trauma, a lot of mental trauma there. We also see Obatala being identified as the father of several Orisha, like Eshu, Ogun, Oshun, and Yewa. He also has a little love affair with Nana Baruku. I call it a love affair because we can't say that they were really married, but they do have relations on a couple of occasions, leading him to be the father of both Babuluaye and Osumare. It's interesting because it's Obatala or Orishanla who is credited with being a parent to Shango. And in this energy, we see Orishala metamorphosis and really transform into female form, then seduce a Ganju to end up having Shango. But that's a whole nother story into itself. Obatala is associated with the color white. Period. He is the father, the king of the white cloth. It's all white, all day, all night, going to sleep in white, waking up in white, living our life in happiness in white. The number 8 is his number, and he's associated with things like cool water, coconuts, milk, shea butter, mild cigars, and of course, bread, the white bread, y'all. Not the brown bread, but the white bread. I want to read you an excerpt from The Way of the Orisha by Philip John Neimark and just really discuss his perception of Obatala. And he writes, Obatala is king of the Orisha. He is the essence of purity, justice, and clear thinking. In one sense, he is the most rational, most linear of the Orisha. He also represents pure and calm way to transcendence. In Ifa mythology, Obatala is probably known as much for his weakness as for his strengths. With all the Orisha, enormous strengths are balanced by equally powerful potential weaknesses. Though Obatala's clarity is essential to his accumulation of wisdom and his dispensing of justice, the clouding or distortion of his clarity may have disastrous results. One of the classic myths of Ifa has to do with Obatala's fall from grace. It's interesting that we see the Orisha who is held in pretty much the most high esteem within the Yoruba pantheon. He makes mistakes, but it's his mistakes that he's really known for. He has had he's had a reputation for over drinking, overworking, neglecting his family, um, not listening, taking the advice of Ifa, not properly tending to himself. He'll work himself to a point where he's not taking care of himself because he take care of everything else. Obatala teaches us that our Oris develop, that our experiences, the things that we experience and the decisions that we make, help us to develop our personality, that we can succumb to weakness, but that doesn't mean we have to stay there. Obatala was given the most important jobs to make land habitable, to create our heads, to create humans. He's the father to the Orisha, meaning that he oversees and delegates a lot of tasks and a lot of the jobs of the other Orisha, kind of making sure they're doing what they need to do. For example, when Ogun decided he wanted to become a Babalawo, it was Obatala who was like, that is not right. This is not what we're doing today. He challenges us in ways that to me seem to be very associated with mental health, with the way we think about it and the way we perceive things and the way we respond to different experiences in our life and different triggers. Which kind of leads us to the question of how does an Orisha that makes so many mistakes, that we see him not learning through necessarily successfully exercising his strengths all the time, but in making a mistake and having to learn from that mistake, how does this Orisha come to represent purity and wisdom and patience? Of course, I have a story for that. This is one of my favorite stories. It's the Obatala Eats Heads. If you would like to find a version of this story to read for yourself, you can find it in Teachings of the Santeria God, Spirit of the Odu by Ochanilili. Obatala Eats Heads. Olofi woke up one morning, and Olofin is the Father, the Holy Spirit. He is the spirit that walks the earth, God's presence on earth. Olofi is like, you know what? I don't mind being present on earth. I like it here. It has its advantages. But he still felt some things that humans feel. He still feels tired. He still feels exhausted. He still feels overwhelmed. And he's like, you know what? Maybe it's time for me to take a break. He's been nurturing and taking care of everything else. And he's just like, you know what? I'm old. I'm tired. I'm gonna take a step back and I'm gonna decide that, maybe one of the Orisha, one of my creations will be able to take over things and kind of do my job here and be my representation here so I can go back to Orun, so I could go back to heaven and hang out with Olodumare and chill. So I could be one with myself. Olofin goes and he calls everybody to this great dinner because he has packed up his bags. He is ready to go. He is like, you know what, babies? I'm not going to be around for much longer, and I need to pick one of you to lead everybody on earth. And it's kind of like, how are you going to choose? How is he going to choose? Then he's like, you know what? The decision will just come to me. It's not something that I need to worry about. It's not something I need to stress over. I'm just gonna have a dinner to celebrate my leaving and just see how things play out. So it took a lot of days and nights for, him to get everything together. And while he was kind of getting everything together, preparing to leave, he wasn't necessarily taking care of the duties that he normally takes care of. And things kind of started falling by the wayside. Obatala noticed this. And so on top of Obatala doing things he normally does, he's also working to compensate for Olofi's absence. So of course, when word gets around to the other Orishas that Olofi is leaving, Shango, the first one up, talking about, well, I should be the new king. I'm a warrior. I can protect everybody. I can take care of everybody. And Oya looks at him and says, why should it not be a queen? Why can't it not be me? I, am quicker with the machete than you are. And I got Iku and I got Death and I got, the Eguns on my side. And you scared of them, but we not gonna talk about that. Yemaya looks at both of them like, sit down, children. My waters cleanse the world of everything. I am the most powerful force here. You children, you better learn to respect your elders. There's no way you could be, my ruler. Oshun says, well, what about me? And they all looked over at Oshun like, girl, sit down. Not today, baby. Their arguments, baby, they was arguing down. And they arguing like Olofi isn't gonna hear them arguing. It get back to them. And Olofi is kind of like, this is messed up because they're all trying to become the ruler just based off of who they are, based off of their vanity. But he's like, you know what, again, they're making it hard for him to make this decision. It's a decision that Olofi has to make. And again, he's like, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and finish setting up the dinner and just invite everybody. It's just going to be real nice. So that evening, baby, when I tell you everybody show up and show out for Olofi's dinner, they show up and show out, baby. And when Shanko looked at his space with the red and white bowl, and his seat was like sitting right between Oshun and Oya, he was like, oh, this is a good sign because I'm sitting right up here next to Olofi. And everybody found their seats and everything was just decorated so nicely. Everything was just personalized for them. Yemaya had blue and white plates, or y'all had nice, just deep burgundy plates. And I mean, everything was just so beautiful. Ogun was like, oh, this green plate is just lovely. I can't wait to eat. And the food in front of them just had them salivating. They all just walking up to the table, bowing to Olofi, telling Olofi just how excited they are, how grateful they are, how humble they are. Just lavishing in the luxury of everything that Olofi has set up for them. And they're just so blinded because it's just so beautiful. This is the most beautiful dinner just they have ever been to. They are just outdone. They could have never even expected to throw a kind of party like that themselves, baby. And so everybody is just looking around and just schmoozing and talking and giggling and gossiping. And nobody even notices that Obatala is not there. Nobody even notices that Obatala is MIA. And Obatala has been gone for a while and everybody's ready to eat. And they're like, we can only schmooze so much. I'm hungry. So finally, Olofi says, you know what, we're going to have to go ahead and eat without Obatala. It's okay. So the servants come out and baby, they brought just everything. They brought everything out. Anything you could possibly want to eat was there to eat. And so, of course, after the prayers were said and the Orishas started to dig in, they all went for their favorite foods. They all went for everything that they love. And they just ate and piled it on and had just a really good feast. Oh, can you imagine eat like that, baby? You'd be happy too. So everybody's happy. And Olofi stands up and he's like, well, I call this dinner because this is a real special night. I'm decided to retire from Earth. And, in my absence, I want to leave an Orisha to be in charge to kind of take over what I'm doing. But I don't know about this decision, just give me some more time to think about it. Plus, Obatala isn't even here. Give me a little while longer. So Olofi sat down and he started eating, a little slow. And he's sitting there waiting, waiting, waiting. And finally, Obatala shows up. Obatala literally is like, I'm sorry, I had so much work to do. I totally forgot about the banquet. He is prostrating himself like Obatala feels bad because he's been doing so much. And Olofi's like, you know, so you was out here working the whole time? Like, you didn't even really have time to clean up. And he's like, no, it's just like been so much work and stuff to do lately. And Olofi is like, you know what, baby, don't worry about it. I'm happy you here. Just go ahead and get you something to eat. So Obatala sees that it's really nothing else left on the table, but the head of the animal that was cooked is still left on the table. Everybody else is pretty much done eating. And with the head, you have the meat is very delicate. but it's a lot of bones in there that you just can't just dig into it. So Obatala is sitting there taking his time eating, and everybody else is getting impatient because not only is Obatala late, Obatala was late, meaning that everybody else had already finished eating. Obatala sees everybody looking at him, and he's like, you know what? I apologize, y'all, but Olafin, there's been so much work just since you've been gone, since you've been taking care of your party and packing and stuff. Like, I just got so caught up doing everything that I forgot it was your special night. Like, and I really do apologize. And Olofi looks at Obatala. He's like, you don't even really need to apologize. And he's like, okay, that's okay. Well, I'm just gonna keep eating. And Shanko's like, well, can we go? Can we leave? Like, obviously nothing's being decided tonight. You just gonna sit here while we all done eating. Like, I got things to do. Olofi asked Shanko, he said, Shanko, tell me what you ate tonight. Shanko said, I chose the tongue and it was very delicious. He said, why did you choose the tongue? Shanko said, I ate the tongue because it's the best food and the worst food in the world. With the tongue, one can create a kingdom or destroy the world. It's full of ashe. He smiled and puffed up his chest, and Shanko was like, well, he about to make me the big dog. Olofi turns to Yemaya. He says, Yemaya, what did you eat today? Yemaya said, I ate the liver. Cause just as my life-giving waters cleanse the earth of evil, so does one's liver cleanse the body of impurities. It's full of ashe. Very wise, Yemaya. Yemaya just smiling because she knew, okay. Olofi turns to Oshun and said, Oshun, what did you eat today? Oshun said, I ate the heart because without the heart, no one can live. No one can love. Without the heart, life itself is meaningless. And a single tear slid down her cheek. Of all Olodumare's creations on this earth, you, Oshun, are the most exquisite. You are a lovely and you are loved by all things big and small. And Oshun was just smiling like, thank you. I'm so, just thank you so much. Olofi turns to Oya. He said, Oya, baby, what did you eat today? Oya said, I ate the tail because the tail, you could scare things away. And I ate the lungs, so with these, we cannot breathe. Hmm. Olofi turns to Obatala. He said, Obatala, what did you enjoy eating today? Obatala said, well, when I arrived, all that was left were the heads of the animals. It was too late. No one waited for me, so I ate the head. Without the head, no one can live. Without a head, the Orisha cannot function. The head you ate and the head you shall ever be, said Olofi. The Orishas was all in shock. They was all like, wait, hold on. We sat here, we had this whole meal, and Obatala eats the heads, and now he's the head of all Orisha. And some of them wanted to argue and contest, but then they know Obatala's character, and they know that when it came to that position, Obatala would be the best person for the job. And from that day on, Obatala has been the head of the Orisha, the king of the Orisha. And we see him take on a leadership role within the Yoruba pantheon, being the one to oversee the roles of others. It's interesting because it's like Obatala doesn't really think twice about taking on the additional work that Olofi left behind. It's something that he cannot not do, to the point where he even forgets about the special dinner. Have you ever felt like you were messing up and ended up actually doing the right thing because you followed your gut and you followed your intuition? Obatala takes his work very seriously, and he never undervalues the importance of his task or his jobs, even to the point where we see a Pataki where Obatala is working so much he doesn't even know what's going on within his home. Obatala, we see him work through things and learn to balance, um that need for action with the need and time to think. He is not a warrior, but he is the king of war, carrying the responsibility of the decisions that were made. In Ebora, Ewo Fatunmbi writes that according to the Ifa creation myth, Obatala tried to organize life on earth with a silver sword and failed because his tools were too weak. In Ifa symbolism, a silver sword represents the evolution of consciousness. The myth is saying that with all the overemphasis on spiritual ideals, they result in failure to effectively embrace the necessary survival skills to sustain life. Following the failure of Obatala, Ogun comes to earth with the secret and the mystery of iron and was able to create cities in the forest. But the Ifa myth also says Ogun's technology was not fully effective. And as a result, Orunmila had to come to earth to correct mistakes made by Ogun. I believe that this means that he gave guidance on the issues of ethical behavior and moral conduct, because we know Ogun ends up needing that. We're going to talk about that later. But we see with here, Obatala does a lot of thinking, like Obatala is the head. Without the head, the rest of the body cannot work and cannot operate. So you see him playing the role of the head of the Orisha and helping them and guiding their development as his own development is nurtured. Obatala is an example of conscious development, and sometimes his creations are flawed because as we develop, we're gonna make mistakes. We can expect to make mistakes when we first learn how to do things. We see Ogun even test Obatala in ways that probably caused him to have a psychological break, because when Ogun first comes to earth and Obatala has to deal with him, Ogun is not nothing nice, baby. He is literally the pure representation of sheer destruction. And then you have Obatala, who's just focused on work and what needs to happen. And then you have another Orisha over here challenging him and causing him problems. How do you work with that? How do you learn to work with that? And we see Obatala progress through these lessons, and we see him develop and change over time. Also, Obatala's failures proving to be opportunities for the other Orishas to test their strengths and show their value. Muferifun Obatala, who was the first to create the world, the symbol of Olodumare on earth. Obatala creates what he chooses, who lives in daily greatness, supporting those who are truthful and taking care of the Ori of those who are deserving. Obatala, the one who got drunk on palm wine and fell asleep, who was unjustly imprisoned, but who continues to mold humans in the wombs of women. The Orisha creator of life, the father of the white cloth, the king of the white cloth. Modube Obatala. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. The books used today can be found on the book list at theasheshop.com, where you can also register for classes, book your individual session, and pick up your spiritual bath and body products. Next week, we will be talking about the mother of fish, Yemaya. So make sure you subscribe to our podcast, and we will see you next week. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Oh.